cha cha cha, parlami del Sudame.
Hello YouTube, welcome to my first debate with Archie Tweed, Uppingham, Oscar Brown, Oundle. Today we're going to discuss whether age difference is a problem in a relationship. I'd like to start with Mr. Tweed. Introduce yourself and what's your viewpoints on the matter.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Archie Tweed, and I believe that age difference does not have an impact in a relationship.
Very good. Mr. Brown?
Yep, hello, I'm Oscar Brown, and I'm with the motion that there is a problem with a large age difference in a relationship.
Very good. I'd like to start with...
Also, like to just wish Oscar a happy belated birthday.
Yeah, let's wish Mr.
Archie,
Brown
that's very kind of
birthday.
you.
Happy belated birthday. Now, I'd like to say there'll be no disagreements, no arguing in this debate.
I think there'll be some disagreements, I'm not going to lie.
I think there might be.
Okay. I'd like to start Mr. Tweed's opening viewpoints on the issue. Mr. Tweed, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, so I personally believe that age does not play a point in it's not an impact in a relationship, as they say, love knows no bounds, and age does not have to play a big part in a relationship, because anyone can love anyone, and you should really love someone for, the success of a relationship is primarily determined on the extent to which partners share moral values, beliefs, and ultimately it comes down to how they view their relationship. And if they can support one another at any age, with whether it's a 30-year age gap or a 1-year age gap, I believe that has no bearing. I think the only reason personally that in general there are more couples of a similar age is just due to social taboos on the matter, that people believe that people should be in a relationship with people of a similar age to them.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Tweed.
I have a little point of intervention, if I may, about what Mr. Tweed has just said. So I had a big problem with what you said there, Archie. You said that relationships are mainly based off of sharing similar values, similar interests. But I ask you, do you not think your interests and your values change over time? And if so, your values are likely to change while you're in a relationship with someone else.
Mr. Brown, I would like you to calm down, and I would like to ask you to say your opening point before.
Look, the first thing I'd like to do, which Archie failed to do, is I'd like to define a romantic relationship, which is, as I'm putting it, it's when the two people involved are significantly in the large age difference. They're significantly senior to one or junior to one another, and I'd like to define the large age difference in the motion as 10 plus years. There's a bit of a grey area between 5 and 7, I'd say, more socially acceptable, and anything less than that is very socially acceptable. But 10 years seems suitable, as that's the rough difference in age that's found by most to be socially queried.
Thank you, Mr. Brown.
So that's the first thing I'll do. One quick thing is that there are a huge number of points in favour of my motion. I'm not going to lie, and so I won't waste time. I've got loads of them, and briefly, they are external social pressures, romantic relationship problems, raising a family, and lifestyle differences.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'd like to start with asking Mr. Tweed a question. Archie, your point. Surely you are arguing that underage relationships are acceptable, such as between a 16-year-old and a 50-year-old.
Thank you for your question, Speaker. Although I disagree with that because, the age gap that we're looking at, although I do believe that age doesn't have an impact on the happiness and the success of a relationship, and age shouldn't be a problem, I think also I've got to take in mind, I think we're ignoring the fact that the law sort of overrules this matter, and the legal age still has to have an impact. And I don't think it's right for a 50-year-old to be seeing a 16-year-old. I think we should be looking at this debate within sort of what's acceptable in the law.
Thank you, Mr. Tweed.
I'd agree with that.
To add?
No, I'd agree with that very much. I think if we put boundaries on the age difference we're talking about, I mean, my main focus is the fact that a 20-year-old and an 80-year-old could have a relationship, and Archie would be forced to argue that there is no problem with that. Anything below 18, anything that is prevented by law, I don't think we should delve into, to be honest.
I also don't want to incriminate myself on social media if it's being posted onto YouTube.
Okay, next statement. Oscar Brown. Many say that each to their own. I've read a Reddit comment where a lady, 20 years of age, is married to an 80-year-old. Some people may turn their noses up in disgust. Some others might not. She says, what actually is important is that the couple, regardless of their ages, have the same desires for the future. If you don't, then the relationship will undoubtedly fail. What is your take?
Firstly, I'd say that that not a few people may disagree with that. I'd say the majority of people disagree with that. So that's the first key point. Social norms are sort of what defines our everyday values, and the social norm, which is currently accepted, especially in the UK and our society, is that a large age difference, particularly of that size, is wrong. Most people would agree with that. That's one point. But also, you say they both have similar interests for the future. I mean, I'm not going to lie. An 80-year-old woman has a much shorter looking future than a 20-year-old bloke. That's just facts, really. And so, if you're looking for a long-term relationship, I would say it's not sensible.
Can I just ask, Oscar, can you please define a long-term relationship?
A long-term relationship, so anything that you're truly invested in, I would say. This is how I'm putting it.
So are you saying that a 20-year-old cannot be invested in a romantic relationship with an 80-year-old?
They can, but it's about your mental preparedness for the situation that you're involving yourself in. Preparedness, yeah. How to the point at which you're prepared for what you're getting yourself into. So if you're looking for a short-term relationship, as in you don't have full plans to be with that person, seeing as the situation evolves, but being with that person forever, then that's not a long-term relationship. I would say a long-term relationship.
The 80-year-old woman could live until she's 110. That's a 30-year relationship. Do you not think 30 years is a long-term relationship?
Statistically unlikely, but more to the point that the 20-year-old guy would at that point only be 50. And what you're suggesting is that 50-year-old lives the rest of his life alone, with a bit of money left over from his 110-year-old partner.
Tonk. Mr. Tweed. Many people say the age difference in relationships. 30% of these couples end in a divorce. And I'm asking you, Mr. Tweed, at the age of 17 years old, yes, say next year when you're 18, would you date a 50-year-old woman?
I personally wouldn't, because that's not my preference, but I know that other people, when it's legal, it might be their preference. But can I quickly ask, how is the 30% statistic relevant to the argument?
Moving on, Mr. Brown.
In today's society,
look, Archie, something that is relevant quickly.
And in divorce, so 30%, that's lower than that. So of that 50%, only 30% of those relationships end in divorce. Are you saying, Speaker, that that relationships with bigger age gaps are likely to be more successful?
Yes, that's what no, I'm saying relationships with a smaller gap will be more successful than relationships with a larger gap. But Mr. Tweed, I'm not arguing with you. I want you two to debate. Thank you, Mr. Brown.
Tweed, I do have something to add to that. Something perhaps a bit more relevant. I apologise, Maddie.
Minus 1 point.
there's a fact here that the most common age difference in the UK between partners is actually between 1 and 2 years. That's the most common. After that, it's between 2 and 3. Okay, there's a very small percentage of people in today's society. Culture has changed over the years, but in today's society, there's a very small percentage of people that choose to actually have a relationship 10 years and plus. And the percentage of marriages that fail and the percentage that succeed, and by that I mean they continue to be married until one of them dies. And the percentage of that is exponentially more likely. The marriage is exponentially more likely to be successful the smaller the age difference. It's a fact.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Also, Mr. Brown, could you say you're being a bit narrow-minded? I heard you said something socially normal. What is normal?
So social norms can be literally defined by statistics, and so it's not a matter of personal opinion. It's literally just a questionnaire going out to the public, and what people would define as normal. It's how people think on average. There's no prejudice involved. It's on my part. It's simply statistics. Okay, that's my answer.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. I'd like to open up the floor to questions to each of the opponents. Archie Tweed, would you like to ask Mr. Brown a civil yet relevant question? Thank you very much.
Yes, in fact, I would. So, Mr. Brown, I've got 2 questions for you.
One at a time.
In a relation, of course, to be in a relationship, if you're in a relationship, let's say next year, when you're of the legal age to go out with anyone north of your age, what is the oldest woman or man that you'd go for?
You're talking personally?
Oh, sorry, yes, in your personal, yeah.
Well, firstly, that completely exceeds this debate, but I will answer happily. I'd say, depending on the situation, for me personally, I don't know, it could be up to about 7-8 years difference.
Well, then surely do you not define that as a big age gap?
Well, as I defined at the beginning of this, which you agreed with, 10 plus years is what we've defined as a large age gap. I don't believe
I did agree to that.
You agreed. I said it at the beginning, and there were no rebuttals, Archie. So unless
there were no rebuttals allowed at the time.
Rebuttals weren't allowed. Okay.
Tonk, enough.
Okay, right. So my second question, Oscar, would you say that your grandparents are happily married?
This is getting personal.
Look, Archie, the debate is whether there is a problem and a cause for concern.
Okay, would you say that there is a problem in your grandparents' marriage, despite that? Remind me, how big's the age gap?
The age gap's 9 years.
Ooh, I thought you said 10 earlier.
I said 10 to FaceTime on you earlier, just so you'd make this point and seem like an idiot. Anyway, okay, I will address that though. Okay, my grandparents are happily married most of the time, and there's no problem with that whatsoever. The biggest point here, which I think you must accept, is that culture changes over time, and 50 years ago, when they got married, the culture in the UK was very different. So the average age between people getting married was more like 5 years rather than 1.7 now.
I'd argue in today's society, though, it's far more acceptable to marry someone of a completely different age group to yours, a completely different generation, born in a different decade.
I think we've got to stay on track here because the message of the debate is whether a large age difference is a cause for concern, not whether it's socially acceptable. And while there are social norms which on average are what people believe, socially acceptable is a whole different thing, because in today's society, a very modern society, you do have to be careful what you say, and we're very accepting. So yes,
No, but
large
social
age
taboos are a
differences
big
are
part. Social
socially
taboos are
acceptable.
play a big part in relationships because people are fearful to get into a relationship with someone younger or older than them because they fear of what the general public, others around them, their peers, their friends, family, whoever
Yeah.
will say will say about the matter.
so-
I would like to stop you both there. I asked for Mr. Tweed to ask Mr. Brown a question. You've gone off on a tangent now. Mr. Brown, may you ask
Okay.
Mr. Tweed a simple question?
I can actually. I don't have any prepared, but I've got about 10,000 points that work well. And one of them, okay, can literally be, Mr. Tweed. Say you had, this is hypothetical. Say you had an old man with a younger woman. Okay, it doesn't matter the age difference, but we'll call it around 10 years. Could be more, could be less. Say the older man doesn't want children. Say the younger woman does, and she's running out of time to have children because she can't have them past a certain age. What would you say in that situation if the two are very much in love and the relationship is positive in all other ways, yet this fundamental part of the next step in the relationship often is having children? And if one of the party doesn't agree with that, I would say that that's massive cause for concern, as it can tear apart a relationship. So what would you say if, due to someone's age, one of the person's age being much senior to the other, it meant that they would not both agree with having children?
Can I just ask, in this scenario, is the man still able to have children?
Able maybe, but you've also got to consider the fact that, say he's 60 at the moment. I mean, men are able to, as you know, for a lot longer than women. So there's that, but there's also the idea of a father figure. So if the child grows up, is his father going to be a grandfather figure, or is he going to be a father figure? That's a big deal, as funny as it sounds, because as you can imagine, I know you had a father figure in your life. You had your father. You need, I'd say,
I still do, everyone. Don't worry. The way that Oscar put that, made it sound like.
But no, but I'd say, as with you, I imagine that having a father figure to bond with, as well as a mother figure at a young age, is quite important. Having someone to play games with and to grow up with.
Yeah, no, I think that's a totally valid point. But I think if the two are very much in love, then I think the most important thing is for them to find a compromise. Now, this isn't a counselling session. I'm not going to offer counselling advice for people who are watching, who are wanting to solve the riddle. But I think there are so many options with in regards to having children. So whether the man is able to or not, there are so many other options which they can consider, such as adoption, donors, things like that. So I think that shouldn't really have a bearing on the relationship. And I think,
but do you not think it's a cause for concern when entering into a relationship? Because that's what
I think it's important in a relationship with a big age gap to address the issue primarily. I think
so it's not something you breeze over if you were entering a relationship like that.
No, I think if one party wants to have children, if the more junior party wants to have children, but they know that their older partner, who is substantially older, may not be able to, for example, I think it's important to address the issue early on in the relationship before anything gets too serious. I think it's important to. So
what you're saying is that
back to what you were saying before. I think back to the father figure. I think it's important, and I don't think that you can say that it would be a grandfather figure. In fact, I think you could argue that in some ways it's almost better to have a parents with a big age gap, because they would be of different generations. They would have different knowledge on completely different things. So the mother would know completely different things than what the father knows, and vice versa. So I don't think that has any impact except for a potential positive.
Okay, I can understand that completely. What I would say is you're less malleable to change as you get older exponentially. Again, you don't change as much as a person as you get older. So the younger person in the relationship is likely to change a lot more. which is
I think
a
that's
very
true
important
if it's
point.
I think teenagers perhaps are very influential and alter drastically due to their sort of surroundings and peers, whatever. But I think once you reach a certain age, your personality doesn't change a huge amount. Perhaps some big event in your life could cause it to change, but that's most likely if you're together. But you're, as you sort of matured, your relationship would mature with you and or alter with you for that matter.
I think it's not just about personality is key.
Thank you.
It's about life aims and what you plan to do, looking into the future, because that can change.
This has gone off onto a long tangent. Thank you very much, Chance.
Okay.
Mr. Tweed, have you ever been walking around in the public and seen a considerably large age gap within two people and judged them for it?
No, I haven't. Who am I to judge a relationship if they're happy?
So if you saw a 20-year-old woman with a man old enough to be her grandfather, would you not show a bit of prejudice towards that? Honestly.
Honestly, if I knew that it was a completely legal relationship, they were happy with one another and very much in love, or even not in love, just happy as a relationship, then I don't think I'd be on par to judge.
Okay.
I'd like to say something about that, if I may. Only the fact that that's brilliant for you, Archie. I'm glad that you're a modern man. You don't judge. But the problem with what you're saying really is that that's not a social norm. Again, and as most people would judge.
Okay, well, most people, I think, well, we live in a country with free will where you can think what you like and say what you like to a certain degree. And I think when it comes to relationships, you're allowed to have your own opinions. Some people would argue that it's wrong, but equally some people would be able to sort of marvel at their happiness and think how marvelous it is that they can have grown up in such different eras yet share such a special bond with one another.
Just like a grandfather talking to his grandson, eh, Archie? That's what it sounds like to me.
Well, I believe earlier in that point I said as long as it's legal and incest is not legal. Being in a relationship with a relative is not legal.
I was making a joke, but never mind. We can make this a bit more serious if you like. I mean, yeah, you make a valid point. If there's sort of good communication between the two, that's fine. That's one tick box. But the real problem with this, and it goes back to the overarching point of this whole topic, which is that there is cause for concern. And you said it yourself. You should be thinking about it. You said you avoided saying cause for concern very much, but what you said, you really just said another way of saying cause for concern, because it is at the end of the day a cause for concern. A large age difference.
What did I say was a cause for concern?
You said a large age difference. I asked you if a large age difference was something to think about in a relationship, and you said I would certainly address it and talk about it with my partner.
I think if you're wanting to make long-term future plans or have children, for example, which I suppose is a long-term future plan, I believe in that situation it is important to address the situation, which was your previous question. Is it important?
One other thing you said was that, just quickly, you said that people are less likely to change after they're teenagers, and that is true. We change a lot when we're very young, but the speed at which you change is on a gentle down slope until the age of 50, actually, and then it pretty much stops. But so what I would say is, say a 50-year-old man who's very comfortable in what he wants to do for the rest of his life. I use the example of a man and a woman, man being older. It's just an example. It could be the other way around. But say he enters a relationship with a 20-year-old girl. She is out partying at the weekends. He's out playing bingo. You get what I mean? And over time, her interests, perhaps her sexual interests even, will change. just as part of growing up.
Just I would like to interrupt. Thank you. This is my question to you. Not a question, almost a statement. I've just been reading, and apparently 50% of younger ladies from the age of 20 to 30 find that older men between the ages of 50 and 70 are better in bed than younger men. Would you agree with that statement?
Who are you addressing?
I can't talk from experience, Maddie. But,
what I mean is each to their own. If someone is sexually interested in someone older or younger, I'm not sure how that's a problem. Like people who have their kinks. You could call finding older men or younger women or older women attractive a kink.
That's completely not a problem. It's completely not. But the sexual side of a relationship is one of the many issues that, as Archie would put it, need addressing before you enter into a relationship with someone that has a big age difference with you. So that there's sexual, there's social, there's lifestyle, there's what else? There's romance. There's romantic, yeah, which I mean can work happily alongside with the sexual, but at the end of the day, starting a family, and even if you don't have plans for that, a stable relationship, money, income, finances. One is going to retire before the others. Before the other does. That's a given in a large age difference relationship.
One could say you'd be more financially stable if you married someone older than you.
Yeah, I didn't want to bring money into this too much because I could easily talk about gold diggers and leave Archie in the dust here. But what I'd say about financially stable is, yeah, what you're talking about basically is gold digging, where you and it might have deeper relationship.
Mr. Tweed, do you have a lawnmower in your room?
I have a lawnmower.
There's a weird sort of carry on, Mr.
There is a weird sound.
Oh, that's my computer. Apologies.
It's
bad.
Let's Mr. Tweed, Mr. Brown, carry on.
Anyway, I would just say that being older doesn't necessarily mean you're financially more stable. I mean it means you're deeper into your career if you have one, but it doesn't mean you have more money. It does in the instances of gold digging because there are young girls specifically looking for wealthy older men. But that's a very small minority, and so. But
is that a problem? Because in that instance, if the thing which makes the woman happy is being with a man who has money, but equally the man is happy having a younger woman in a relationship, even if he knows that she's in it for the money, is that a problem if they're both happy?
Okay, so if you want to get into gold diggers, I can. I was going to spare you that, but you're welcome. You're welcome to get into it. Okay, so what I'd say about gold digging.
The question a bit, both of you.
Okay. Well, in which case, I'd like to address Oscar's point from earlier. I've actually now forgotten what it is. It was about you were saying how about how a 20-year-old girl might want to go out partying whilst her husband stays at, or partner, whatever, stays at home. What did you? I can't remember what you said. Playing poker.
Playing bingo. I was joking. But the point remains the same.
But I think
different lifestyles.
I think their lifestyles. I think if one party isn't happy with it, then I think in a relationship it's important to talk about things, any issues or anything which you might have a problem with. And I don't think that's in relationships with a big age gap. I think it's in any relationship. And if it appears to be a problem, then if they are truly in love, they will find a compromise. But if they're not, then if they can't find a compromise, then perhaps they can't love each other for what the other person's interests are. And I think in a relationship, it's important to find compromises and to be accepting and support your other half's interests.
I'd just like to say love is emotional, and you talk about love, but love is emotional. What we're talking about is a relationship which is more practical. And so while you might love someone, the issues we're addressing are whether it's financially viable, whether it's good to go into a relationship for a family, or whether
in the question, in the motion, there was never any talk of finance. It was is an age difference.
Exactly. There was no talk of
a
finance.
problem in a relationship.
There was no talk of finance, but a relationship is not purely romantic. That's a key element of it. But that's not what it purely is. And the romantic part is the bit that's most likely in check. The real problem with the relationship in this instance with an older man, younger woman, younger man, is that they might have similar interests that evolve over time as they mature, particularly the younger one.
Gents, we're running out of time. I would like you now to both sum up your points in a quick conclusion. Your conclusion lasts 2 minutes. I'll be timing you. Mr. Tweed, I would like you to start your conclusion. You ready?
I'm ready.
Now.
Okay, so I think one thing which we've got to, one thing which Maddie said, which is particularly important to the discussion that we've had, is that she said, the quote, each to their own. And I think that's very relevant to what we're discussing, because everyone has their own personal interests and even kinks or fetishes, as Maddie discussed earlier. And if your kink or fetish is being in a relationship with someone senior to you or junior, then I think I don't think we as outsiders have any position or in any position to judge that. And so to summarize, I think I'd say that, well, I would most certainly agree with the motion that there is no problem at all with an age difference in a relationship, as long as the two people are both happy and it's legal. I can't see a problem with that.
Thank you, Mr. Tweed. That took you 1 minute. Mr. Brown, I'd like you to start your summarization now.
Well, I'd just say, from what Archie said, kinks, fetishes, anything sexual, that's only a very minor part of what a relationship is. And what we need to think about in this debate is a more logical approach to it. And the only logical solution I can see is to really consider, if you're going into a relationship with a large age difference, to really consider what you're getting yourself into. Because, to raise a family, to be financially stable and confident in your finances for the future, to have a happy romantic relationship that's ongoing, that's a key point. But also to not offend social pressures, to not offend social pressures, a sexual relationship or any relationship, even if the marriage was not sexual, should not have more than 10 years age gap in today's society, I don't believe. And I'm sorry, Archie, to break the news to your prep school Snapchat hoes, but I don't think it's a viable option, a large age difference in a relationship in today's society. I think there's too much to think about for both people. I think a younger person doesn't know what they're getting themselves into most of the time. And I think at the end of the day, even if the relationship is going to happen, it needs addressing big time. And then just lastly, thank you, Maddie. I don't want you to vote for Archie just so you can get on with older men, which I know you want to do.
No personal opinion.
But I would say Archie desperately wants to be against Oleander in the next round. Don't make his wishes come true. That's all I'd say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, gents.
Thank you very much for having us, Maddie.
Yeah, I'd like to thank you for joining in with this debate. I will put the polls up on Instagram, see who wins this debate. Thank you very much, gents.
On Instagram?
Yes, on Instagram, Oscar.
You're putting this on Instagram?
No, on
It's
YouTube.
going on to YouTube, Oscar. So watch us out there.
Bongo la, bongo cha cha cha, parlami del Sud America.